What's up, welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Thunderbolts, the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe film. Thunderbolts has had a lot of expectations laid upon the film due to the relative malaise we've continued to go through with the MCU. Captain America Brave New World did not go well earlier this year. There's been just a lot of talk and agita about where is the MCU storytelling? Where is that momentum with the next Avengers film a year out? The core premise of the MCU's Thunderbolts, what if Marvel had their own Suicide Squad movie, is very strong. And when you anchor such a film with Florence Pugh, the results, unsurprisingly, turn out pretty decent. Thunderbolts has a lot of the fun, wisecracking humor we come to expect from the MCU's tone, and it's able to reuse a lot of minor characters because the film actually has some emotional depth to it, and Pugh is such a floor raiser when it comes to this kind of material. The dynamic between Pugh's Yelena and Lewis Pullman's Sentry is something you don't get too much of in the MCU, and I think makes the conflict feel just a little bit different than what we're come to expect from Marvel. The film also succeeds in communicating a lot of MCU continuity, picking up where Cap 4 left off and tying us into what we know is coming next. As much as we used to talk about liking and wanting MCU movies that stood alone, I think we really need that narrative momentum to return. And if Fantastic Four this summer continues this trend, I think confidence in Marvel will really return, because I think Thunderbolts is a really great way to start this off. You know, we just kind of think about like what's happened, right? I think Marvel is finally, and we're crossing our fingers, but Marvel seems to have finally begun to leave its just very troubled creative period, right? Where we've moved beyond the watering down of the brand that happened on Disney Plus, where we got a lot of shows in a short amount of time, and most of those shows did not have the best quality control, right? Also, we just had a string of films that just did not work and suffered from various creative and production issues. Films like The Marvels and Captain America Brave New World, which went through extensive reshoots, right? We just had a lot of things that didn't work out, right? Even Black Panther 2, obviously that didn't work out to the degree it should have due to unforeseen consequences. Of course, the passing of Chadwick Boseman, right? Something else wasn't expected. Marvel had to completely rework its whole plan and post-Endgame planning because of everything that happened with Jonathan Majors in his personal life, and they had to jettison Kang the Conqueror as the next antagonist. A lot of things have happened, but it feels like with Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, something that feels like a big event in the MCU once again. Of course, Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, another Spider-Man, Tom Holland film. It feels like we have some momentum back, and we obviously know how monumental Doomsday and Secret Wars are going to be for the future and continuing storytelling with the introduction of the X-Men and Fox characters and whatnot. Man, it's a fool me once, fool me twice type thing with the MCU, just because it's been a fallower period. But I do feel like we might be seeing the light at the end of the tunnel at last. But yeah, back to Thunderbolts itself. I think Thunderbolts just on its merits, it is a pretty good time. I think honestly it's incredibly tight in the beginning, right? Because it's a kind of, I think, a clever way to do what the MCU has often done, right? Which is, the MCU in its heyday, which was take characters and stories that have been introduced and find ways to prop them up. And in this case, think about what's actually being propped up with Thunderbolts. We're talking about two characters that were essential faces from the 2021 Black Widow film, which of course was one of the lowest grossing, least seen MCU films due to the pandemic. Of course, that'd be Florence Pugh's Yelena and David Harbour's Red Guardian. You have the villain of Ant-Man 2, Ghost, not the most well-liked villain, didn't make a huge impression. You, of course, have two of the stars of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, with Bucky, of course, a MCU staple, the longest-running character in this story, and also Wyatt Russell's U.S. agent. Of course, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, in hindsight, one of the stronger MCU TV series, but definitely was not super well received due to a poor finale. So, think about all the characters that are being brought into the mix here. It's not exactly a lot of heavy hitters in the MCU, right? This is not a Avengers, despite what the film gets into at the very end, of course. And of course, lest I forget, also Taskmaster is in this film, another Black Widow character, right? The conception of the story with all these characters are really, really Pugh's Elena, who's the lead character of the film. This is her first, starring role in the MCU, of course, supporting character in Black Widow, cameo appearance in the Hawkeye series. Now she's the star of Thunderbolts, and she really gets to get into it. Of course, Pugh, one of, I think, the great actors, the great stars of her generation at this point. That much is obvious, and I think she really increases the quality of this material, because she's actually been giving a lot of character work, with this film, in terms of feeling listless and looking for a purpose in her life, and also feeling a tremendous sense of guilt for all the bad things that she knows she's done, and having that be the core internal conflict to her character, and being a source that she can relate with Lewis Pullman's Sentry / Bob character. I think all that really works. And as I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, I'm liking everything with the characters. I'm liking the setup. I'm liking the meet cute, the way it's set up by Valentina, where everyone meets for the first time before they unplanned go about a way of forming a team, due to necessary survival and whatnot. I was like, oh, this is all working, and I actually think it's looking pretty decent. The fights are communicated well. The CG, there's no glaringly bad CGI or anything like that. The thing that I thought might have been missing was there's not really a standout set piece, with this. And of course the MCU, up and down in terms of set pieces. We always talk about superhero movie film third acts, and how oftentimes your eyes might glaze over when you watch them, but they're a necessary evil type thing with these kind of movies, right? This movie got pretty creative though towards the end. I wasn't expecting it. I knew that this character of Sentry, Sentry, Void, Bob, Lewis Pullman's character, I knew that character was polarizing in various iterations and had a kind of storied comic history. And the film, with the marketing, also kind of let the cat out of the bag about what was going to happen with Sentry, if you saw some of those trailers, which is a bit disappointing. But the whole nightmare room, dream room things that was happening, from the Void, I thought that was actually really creative, and it was totally in concert tonally with everything that was happening with Yolanda's character in the beginning of the film, in terms of what she was struggling with. I thought all that really worked, and it makes a lot of sense, because these characters are, they're boots on the ground types. They're not super powered. Obviously, Red Guardian and Bucky are, enhanced, but they're not there's no Thor or Doctor Strange going on right now, right? So I like that was, I think, a compelling and visually interesting way to have a big set piece with these people that aren't super powered. And also the film, of course, doesn't even shy away from that. It's very much openly talking about how these characters understand they have limitations, and they have a lot of self-doubts and stuff. So I think a lot of that's really solid, And again, in terms of MCU continuity, Bucky is now a congressman after he was running in Cap 4. I like that follow-up movie to movie. Valentina bought Avengers Tower from Stark's. We knew Stark had sold that from Spider-Man Homecoming or whatever. That's a cool little nod. And then the post-credit scene, of course, is a direct allusion to the Fantastic Four ship barreling towards Earth, which is obviously very exciting. And is that a surprising post-credit scene? No, but again, you like that continuity and momentum. You feel like you're really working towards something again. And the whole gag about Valentina calling this crew at the end the New Avengers, and then when you get to the post-credit scene, you see all these fake magazine and newspaper covers about all this doubt and disbelief, and are these the real Avengers and stuff. And then we learn that Sam Wilson is suing them for the Avengers name and all that. I think that's great. That's really fun. I'm sure we'll get more of that in the future. Really enjoyable. With this movie, you have Geraldine Viswanathan playing Valentina's assistant Mel, and of course Lewis Pullman playing Sentry. Those two roles were actually recast. Originally, it was going to be Iowa Debary as Mel and Stephen Yeun as Sentry, and I think both of them would have been great in those roles, but I think Lewis Pullman did a really good job. He has to do a lot. He has to communicate a character who is struggling with depression and, maybe other mental illness as well. Someone who's clearly unstable and not completely well. And he has to communicate, I think, a lot without, he doesn't get over the top. There's not these crazy, schizophrenic mood shifts or anything like that. I think he did a really good job in playing like neurotic and nervy, but also troubled. And again, like I love the dynamic that he had with Florence Pugh in the movie. Yeah, and of course, we get a lot of Valentina herself, of course, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who we've seen in a handful of movies to this point. But she was actually pretty compelling as a villain, as someone who's kind of slimy and doing whatever she needs to survive and hold on to power. I like her as a villain for like this small, grounded group, and I love the kind of curveball she throws on the team at the end with claiming them as this new Avengers team. That's pretty fun. You know, the film was directed by Jake Schreier, who's on the younger side of directors in his early 40s and also not super experienced. His last film was Paper Towns, right? Kind of reminiscent of some of the earlier MCU days where they would have directors who aren't super experienced and kind of mold the movie around them. I'm curious if that's exactly how this movie was made, but he, of course, does not fall into the James Gunn, Ryan Coogler, Sam Raimi bucket, right? So interesting. Also kind of amusing that Taskmaster gets offed early on in the first scene when they all meet at the vault and are trying to kill each other due to Valentina's scheming and pitting them against each other. I like that because it kind of gets in the way of the marketing and stuff. And you thought she was going to be part of the team. She ended up not being part of the team. She's killed off. Kind of reminiscent of the original 2016 Suicide Squad where they killed Adam Beach's character. What was it? The guy in the rope right away, right? Or even what happened with Pete Davidson in James Gunn's Suicide Squad. So I think those are kind of fun little touches where you think someone's going to be on the team and they don't make it past the first 10 minutes. But yeah, I think, moving out of this too, I mean, I think it's great that this film is good and it's directly tied into the continuity. All that's great. And I can't wait for more of Florence Pugh as Yelena. She's clearly going to be one of the faces of the MCU moving forward. And if you're going to pick analogs, she'll effectively be the new Black Widow face in whatever Avengers iteration she ends up participating in. Of course, she is literally a widow herself, but I think that's great. I think Pugh's really good in this role, and I hope to see more of them. And of course, Bucky's a fan favorite. We'll know he'll be around, and way to rehabilitate Ghost of all people from Ant-Man 2. Didn't expect that. But yeah, let me know, what'd you think of Thunderbolts? Or are you pretty pleased like I am? What's your favorite part about it? What are you most looking forward to seeing next from the MCU? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe. I'll see you next time.